Kelsier versus Glokta. Two very different but oddly similar in certain ways characters. This is the second round of the tournament, Fight 3, I believe. Let's go ahead and jump into it. You know, the 7 categories. We have origin, development, role, interest for the reader, relationships, who would win in a fight, and least importantly of all, who would do better in the other's world, the only point that matters if there's a tiebreaker. So getting into the first point, origin. Glokta here is a tortured man, someone who was great, but has fallen so far to become resentful and hateful of all of those around him. Kelsier is the fighter, the person who has lost so much, they went kind of the other way. He's someone who's determined to keep fighting and never stop. Whether it's to die a martyr or achieve his goal, nothing will prevent him from doing what he can to bring down the Empire. This is two great origins, and I like them both a lot. As well, both are executed masterfully, though for originality, I have to give it to Glokta. His origin is just next level original. No one has anything even similar to him that I can think of, and still lands on the protagonist side of things, and it's even debatable if he is a protagonist. It's really shocking to follow a character so closely whose morals are so sketchy. Now the next point we have is development. Both of these characters don't develop in the fact that they change much as a character, but understanding who they are and their motives is their development throughout their respective series. We learn Kelsier's true motivations and his past, and that kind of fully flushes out his character for us. Meanwhile, Glokta's origins handed to us on a silver platter, but his development is really learning the ramifications of what happened to him on his character and who he really becomes. The only edge here for Kelsier's development is how his relationship with Vin helps him develop. It's really through Vin's eyes that we learn who Kelsier's is, and the execution of this is incredibly well done and one of the best aspects of the original Mistborn series. Glokta, on the other hand, well, his development may be a little deeper. The execution is not as well done in my opinion, so for this reason I'm actually going to give the development point to Kelsier. Yes, Glokta's development is more original, and that's largely due to his origin and the refusal to actually turn him into a good guy, but I still think Kelsier gets the development point due to just Brandon Sanderson's overall execution and the subversion that happens throughout the series with his development. So for those reasons, he gets the point. Now we have role they play in the world they are in. Now Glokta's role is a very personal one for the reader. He doesn't have a huge impact on the world around him except for his role being the lens of the reader kind of exploring this mystery behind the scenes. A great role and something that certainly for the reader is incredibly useful. But for the overall series, his role kind of varies in how much impact it actually has. Switch over to Kelsier, whose role is monumentous and executed just as well. While he may not be a traditional chosen one, he still falls into the role of kind of being the center of a lot of the motion in the series. Someone who's really the catalyst for what happens, and someone who's responsible for putting so many things in emotions that for we as the reader, he really is just an irrefutably incredibly valuable resource. Kelsier is awesome in his role, and his role is really the source of a lot of love that the reader base has for him, whether they know it or not. It's because we traditionally think the person who occupies this role will continue on to carry the series. The fact that that's kind of subverted is eye-opening and something I enjoyed a lot. So for the role point, I'm going to go ahead and hand it to Kelsier here. Now we have interest for the reader, and this one for me was a tie in almost every way because they are extremely opposite in the sources of their interest. Kelsier, it's much more of a role-based interest. It's who this guy is in the world he's in and how he's affecting the world around him. Meanwhile, for Glokta, it's almost entirely the new interesting aspect of this different kind of character and the overall execution of that character. He's so different and off-putting yet charming in a very strange way, and his relationships with those around him are so impactful that we are really drawn into it as the reader. And for that reason, I'm actually going to lean Glokta here. It's just so well done, and every page with him, well, it may not be action-packed like a lot of Kelsier's stuff is. It's so political yet personal, and this mix of everything in his past constantly weighing on his actions. You can feel the hatred and anger really pushing Glokta down these dark paths. And while there still might be some kind of decent human being in there, it's not, as the reader, we're really hoping for it to show itself in some way. He just refuses to at every really important turn, and Glokta, as a character, subverts so many things. And while Kelsier may have his biggest subversion in the role he kind of switches in, for Glokta, the real interest just comes for the raw character that's there. And I have to give him the point for that reason. It's so next level. And anyone who hasn't read the First Law Trilogy, you will be enthralled by Glokta. Maybe out of revulsion, but the enthrallment will still be there. Now we have relationships. Kelsier has one awesome relationship. That is with Vin. It is so well done. This mentor role that is used to introduce the reader to the world fits right in with the fantasy trope of this kind of dynamic happening, but it's a really great execution of that trope, and I enjoyed it a lot. Kelsier is a wonderful mentor to Vin and really does set her on the path she needs to go down. That being said, when it comes to relationships, once again, Glokta's originality helps him so much here. He's not nice, he's not good, yet he has friends and there's people that are connected to him that he has to continually interact with. And us knowing what we know about Glokta and hoping beyond hope that he'll turn around and do the right thing, consistently in his relationships, he does the wrong thing or he does something horrible and awful. And this results in us as the reader kind of hoping he backs away from these people who might be genuinely happier or better off without him. But at the same time, you really want these relationships to stick around Glokta because it maybe could make him better as a person. And that's something we're all pulling for. So this conflict it generates throughout the series lends so much to helping the series evolve and lending to that key relationship dynamic that's in the First Law Trilogy. I have to go ahead and give relationships to Glokta here. Just as a wider whole for the series, that aspect plays such a key dynamic. It would be foolish of anyone to say Kelsier should take this role just because of him with Vin. Yes, he does have his crew as well, but the relationships there are never really explored that much between Kelsier and them. They're much more explored between Vin and the crew. For that reason, I just have to hand it to Glokta here. There's just really no debate. And now we have who would win in a fight. And again, Kelsier is going to easily sweep this point. There's not much of a real reason to even debate this much. He is an incredibly powerful character who can move well beyond standard human sight and has abilities out there. He can do so many different things, and his versatility with what he can do is what's really impressive. His power set is one of the most interesting aspects of his character. I love the magic system in Mistborn. I was so foolish when I said it was basic in my first review, and I really enjoy Kelsier's different use of it. It's so dynamic, and it's so, well, not being maybe original, it's so just well done overall that I'll hand him that easily. And this fight is actually going to come down to the tiebreaker. And the reason this is because of the way these characters are so different. They are main protagonists with a very dark past that are going down a not as maybe light as most protagonists' path go down, but they are strong as characters in very different aspects here. One is relationship origin driven, while the other is role and power set driven, as well as maybe slightly relationship. And both are strong in development, that's undeniable, but I just think it's an interesting counterbalance between the two. But let's go ahead and get in the last point here. Who would do better in the other's world? Glokta pulled out of his element, dropped into Mistborn, where people are so powerful and he is so not, would have to rely entirely on his mind, a very sharp tool. But without his political connections and his real skill set being that of torture, he'd have to work for the Empire. And, well, don't get me wrong, I don't think Glokta's the most morally pure guy. I don't think he'd be willing to work with what a lot of the Empire is dealing with, nor do I think he'd be able to get in easily, because the Empire does not seem like a place where someone can easily rise in the ranks, especially a cripple, whose only knowledge set is torture. I fully believe the Empire tortures, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they need Glokta. Those roles are probably well filled. Kelsier, on the other hand, dropping into the First Law Trilogy, would be an incredibly powerful being with a magic set no one's ever seen before. This would give him all kinds of elements of surprise. He would only need to maintain a consistent supply of metal, something he probably wouldn't have that much trouble with in the First Law Trilogy. Just meet a blacksmith or someone in that industry and establish a connection. With his power set and his skill set, he could easily get jobs doing either and slowly rise in power and position until he has his own organization working for him again. I don't know if he'd be driven to take on something large like he is in the Mistborn world, because he doesn't have the hatred towards any group that he has towards the Empire because of what they did to him, but I still think he would fight for the good in general, and certainly fight against entities that remind him of the Empire. So for that reason, the fact that he's actually going to have a semi-decent establishment and probably enough motivation to really kick ass in this world and not a lot of people who could stop him, I'm going to go ahead and give Kelsier the final point and the victory. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I refreshed myself thoroughly on both characters before jumping into it because I thought that would be really important moving on into the second round and therefore onward into the third and fourth. And I really liked this matchup. I think it is a great matchup just because of how different they really are at their cores as beings. Yet they are similar in odd ways. It's really interesting to see. But like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support the channel. Hope to see you guys soon. Have a good one. Hope your week's starting at least similar.